Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Liz, and I'm the program manager of Carolina Navigators at UNC Chapel Hill. And I work with undergrad students that have some type of intercultural expertise. And we create resources, global education resources for K-12 students in North Carolina. So I'm here today with two of my students, Sarah and Sammie, and they're going to talk to you a bit about going abroad, how to go abroad, why to go abroad, some of the advantages, and also give you a chance if you want to ask them questions just about UNC in general. We'll have some time at the end for some Q&A as well. We are recording this so that I can share it with Miss Blystone in case she wants to show it to any of her other classes, but the only people that'll show up in the recording are our presenters, so you don't need to worry about yourself showing up. And we'll use the participant panel some maybe throughout to get some yeses and nos from you and some questions, and we'll use the chat. Also throughout the presentation, if you want to answer a question, you're feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself and answer questions and ask questions as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Sammie and Sarah, and we'll get started.
Hi, so I'm Sarah. I think my Zoom name says Sarah. That's my full name, but I go by Sarah. I'm a sophomore at UNC studying journalism and communications. My areas of interest are France and Thailand. I studied French in high school and in my first year at UNC, and my father is from Thailand. And I am a recipient of the Phillips Ambassador Scholarship to Asia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sammie. I'm a senior at UNC. I'm double majoring in global studies and management society. I specifically focus on the Middle East and study Arabic. Areas of interest, I studied abroad in Tunisia, and my family is from El Salvador, so I've had the opportunity to go abroad there. And then I was a recipient of the Diversity Abroad Ambassador Scholarship for the last spring.
And I'm just curious, those of you that are in the room, if you've taken a foreign language while you've been in high school or in middle school, if you want to go to the participant panel and click yes or no if you've taken some language. We're curious what language you guys have studied.
You can type it in the chat box too, guys.
Yep, or the chat box. Yep, either way. Or you can tell us which language if you want.
Question is, have you taken a foreign language? And if you are taking a foreign language, what are you taking?
So some people haven't yet, but some Spanish. Yep, Spanish definitely counts. Oh, and so speak some Italian. Lots of Spanish. All right, good. Yeah, so languages can help you when you're going abroad, depending where you go abroad. You can also study abroad in English-speaking countries, but that's good to know. Some of you are taking Spanish. All right.
All right, and to kick it off, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. And so, have any of you ever thought about studying or living abroad?
So you can write in the chat, and if you have a certain place that you are interested in going abroad, feel free to write that country or that area of the world. Yeah, so it looks like a lot of people want to, maybe Italy, Japan. Someone said their parents won't let them, which we're going to talk a little bit about barriers. Someone says they love traveling. Good. England, anything in the UK, Italy, Scotland. Yeah, those are all great places. I really want to go to Scotland. That's on my bucket list.
All right. And the following question is, what are the benefits, or what do you think are the benefits of going abroad?
Again, you can write those in the chat of how you think that might be helpful if you go abroad. You get to see new cultures, learn about different cultures. Good. Someone said they stole their answer. Learning new languages, meeting new people, the experience. Yeah, those are all great benefits. The food. Yeah, definitely the food. I studied abroad in France Luckily, when I was studying abroad in France, I didn't know that I was allergic to gluten and dairy yet. So I got to eat all the bread and all the pastries.
All right. And what do you think might stop you from going abroad?
Good. So again, you can write in the chat. One person said maybe their parents, finances, leaving family. Yeah, those are common reasons.
We'll definitely talk about some.
Funds, fears of the unknown. Yep, and Sarah and Sammy are going to talk to you about the funding side because there's actually a lot of solutions for that at UNC anyways, which is great. There's lots of scholarships you can apply for to go abroad. All right, we'll go on to the next one.
All right. So to kick it off, I'm going to talk about why I studied abroad. So for me, I'm actually from a small town near Winston-Salem. So I am a first generation college student, meaning I am the first one to go to college from my family. And when I was thinking about studying abroad, I needed to make sure the program was going to be, worthwhile. And so a lot of things came down to, will I be able to get college credit? Will I be able to get that cultural immersion? Will I be able to also, pursue my interest in studying Arabic? So wanted to make sure that was in there. And also just know that if I studied abroad, making sure that I would value it and also just thinking about how I would be able to learn, outside of our typical classrooms here in the United States.
Do you want to tell us about your photo, Sammy?
Oh yeah. So this photo is us in the desert. We were close to Algeria. I can't give you the name exactly, but we got to ride the camels for about an hour. This is traditional like clothing, but this is not something they typically wear every day. But they wanted to get us a full experience, and the sand is very, very thin, so you actually need to be very covered because if not, like for example, it could also like get stuck in your phone, and it would have taken forever to take that out. And so it was pretty nice. My camel and the camel behind it were actually fighting each other on the way there. So yeah, pretty much all of them are chained in threes. So biggest to smallest, to give you an idea, but definitely great experience.
Okay, cool.
All right. And so my program is actually through a third party, meaning that it wasn't through my university, but they are partnered with them. And so I pretty much looked into the different programs they offered specifically. And SIT offers about maybe 4 different programs located in the Middle East. North Africa is just a little separate because the North African region is a little bit different because they have a bit more European influences. And so, personally, I was very interested in seeing those different cultures. And so, I specifically chose Tunisia for that reason. And I actually found out that a lot of the classes I would be taking there was going to count for my global studies major. So, even though I was going, outside the country, I was also getting credit and being able to finish my major on time. And so, another thing that really helped is that the system there had a very good like support just in terms of staff. As you can see, the one in the burgundy shirt his name is Rashid. He was one of the program directors. If you needed anything, like contact him or the other 2 staff on board. And so this is one of our excursions where we actually went to Jamaica, I think is what it's called. And so this one's about maybe 100 miles from the Algerian border. But also another important part was for me was the host families, which means that while I was living in Tunisia, I also got to live with a Tunisian family who primarily spoke to me in Arabic and bits of French. And so it was a lot more learning outside of the classroom. So I did go to class, but at home I had to make sure, I reviewed my vocabulary because my parents didn't know English that well. And I had an older sister who did, but I was there to practice the language, so I couldn't be constantly speaking in English, which I mean was great because I ended up learning their dialect, which is a little bit different than the Arabic that's taught within the classrooms, but definitely very useful. Okay. So a little bit more about my host family. This picture right here with the cars is actually my daily walk to school, which I was very lucky because all my peers were placed about a 30-minute walk from the school, and I was 5 minutes away, so I could sleep in, not have to worry about getting up early. And this picture at the bottom is actually the view from my bedroom. There is a train that kind of passes by every like 15 minutes, takes you from City Busaid to the capital, which is very nice because it cost about maybe like $1 the ticket ride. Um, but yeah, it was very accessible in terms of transportation. They did facilitate my language learning, like I said, because right near these like local, you can't really see in the picture, but there are different little stores where I could walk in and just buy goods. And thank goodness I knew how to count. So a lot of times, like just remembering that from the classroom is easier to not make sure that I was paying in the right quantity, and also try different foods. And that was also part of the program. Our professors would actually cook different meals and teach us how to make it, but also incorporate the foreign language within that. And besides that, like we got to see, the lifestyle. I did meet a lot of my sister's family members when she's up here in the black. Um, I found out that she has a lot of family located in Europe, specifically like Germany, Holland, and family from Saudi Arabia. So I got a chance to try Saudi Arabian rice and meat. And so, unfortunately, I did study abroad when COVID hit. So I actually was supposed to be in Tunisia for 3 months, and I was supposed to go to Italy for a month. But because COVID hit, we were told to come back halfway through. So I only got to live in Tunisia for 2 months. But fortunately, like we did finish some of our coursework beforehand. So my Arabic class and another class were done by then. And we only had 2 more classes left. So everything went online, but we met like every week. We were very connected. And so I definitely like my cohort support because even after, going abroad, like we still talk every once in a while. And pretty much, um, as you can see, they're all pictured here in the table. But there was only, I think, maybe one other person from North Carolina, but they were still an out-of-state student. But regardless, like everyone was pretty much from New York, other states. And then one important thing that once you get older, if you are interested in, my program had an internship opportunity or a research opportunity, but due to the COVID changes, it really came down to you either do research or if you weren't interested, just take 3 credits for the 3 classes. And so pretty much I ended up going for research just because I had never done that. But I will say that I definitely got a lot of support on that end because I had someone from Tunisia constantly like Skyping, helping me collect all this information because specifically my project was on how sub-Saharan migrants use social media to migrate to Tunisia. And it turned out pretty well. Definitely did everything I would have done if I had been there in person. I wish I would have gotten the opportunity to do an internship, but regardless, like I said, don't let anything limit you. And so these pictures give you an idea. This is City Busaid, so it's actually well known for being the city with just blue and white like architecture. And right here is like a bathroom on our way back from Chibika. And then this picture with me and my friend, we're in the capital. We ate at a restaurant right here by like the yellow door.
Yeah, and I know quite a few UNC students. One of the benefits of COVID is some people are actually able to do internships abroad and stay here. And they would have liked to go abroad, but they were still able to do internships and work in another country and work with people from other countries and be here in the US. So maybe that's something that's going to continue as well, those international internship opportunities where you're still in the US, if that's something that would work better for you.
And so learning outcomes, like I said, it was very like, regardless of the time period, those 2 months definitely were enough to give me that cultural immersion because I was daily like trying different foods, constantly trying to also learn Arabic and increase my proficiency. And definitely just going outside, you have to interact, with different people, and it's kind of like a learning game there. And then just kind of sightseeing also per se. But definitely the dialect stuck with me. I still remember a few of those words. We did have a class at the beginning to kind of get us introduced. So they do, like I said, really help you get immersed from the very beginning. And then networking, I definitely, like I said, still keep in contact with a lot of people. And also, I met some important figures from Tunisia. And so it was very nice to kind of have like the person who's like the head of the education, teaching the class, because he's in the Black. He's actually worked in a lot of important government positions in his past. And I mean, he just retired after our program. So it's pretty nice to, still be able to talk to him and hear from his experience. And definitely would say like going abroad made me like realize, we're not really limited to only just working in the United States. Like if you are really interested in pursuing, something outside, like just taking this step is kind of like very eye-opening and kind of helpful to kind of see what can I do, once I go abroad. And so for example, there's like opportunities in the United Nations and stuff like that. But for reference on the picture, this one at the bottom is what our classroom looked like. It was pretty much a round table. There were 3 classrooms. It was just basically like an apartment setup, but with 2 connected in between. And then where I love Tunis is the capital. And then here we have like typical Tunisian food. So they eat a lot of pasta, a lot of olives, very spicy food.
All right, so now I'm going to talk more about the how-to side of things if you're thinking about going abroad now. So most of what I talk about is going to be, again, about studying abroad. We will talk about other opportunities, volunteering, employment abroad, but a lot of it's going to be about studying abroad. But no matter what you do, the first step is getting your passport. I honestly would get it as soon as possible just because it takes 3 months. And so you can wait until you know that you're going to be going abroad, but I think it's nice to go ahead and have that taken care of before you decide that, and then you feel rushed to get your passport in time. You can get it in about a month, but I think that takes an extra $60, so nobody really wants to do that. So normally where you can apply at a passport would include places like post offices, courthouses. I looked it up for you guys, and it looks like your closest place to apply for a passport is at the Gates County Courthouse. It does cost some money, about $115 to $150 per passport and application. It is a bit cheaper if you go ahead and apply when you're 16. So if you're ready to do that, that's definitely something to do now. There's another option, a passport card, which is cheaper. It's about $50 or $60, again, depending on the age you apply. It is limited, so it gives you access to Canada, Mexico, the Bahamas, and Bermuda, but it is cheaper. So if you know that you might be going to one of those countries, but you're not sure about spending all the money that goes with the passport yet, that's also a good option. And everything there is to know about getting a passport or where you can get one is at the state travel website, and that's there at the bottom. And I'll also have links at the very end, every single piece of information that I gave you today. So if there's something I say that you're particularly interested in, there's a link at the end that you'll be able to screenshot and everything.
And the good thing with the passport is I think that after you're 18, I'm not sure how long it's good for if you apply before you're 18, but after you're 18, I think it's 10 years that they're.
Yeah, I think if you apply before 18, you have to renew it within 5 years, and after 18, it's every 10 years. And I think that might be around another $100 to renew, but that is, you can have it for a long time before you ever have to do that. So
Yeah, so if you think about it, if it's good for 10 years, it's like $15 a year, which isn't as bad. But yeah, it's just the initial payment the cost of the passport's gone up, unfortunately.
Yeah, so they are more expensive now than they have been before, but looking on the bright side, if you're going to college, your college is really going to want to help you as much as they can in getting a passport. Lots of colleges have passport offices. This isn't all of them I have listed here, but just for example, State has one, UNCW, NC Central, and even for schools that don't have passport offices, most still offer some sort of passport services, so they can help you with whatever you need, if it's just applying or if it's for finding ways to pay. If the cost of the passport is a concern, it's also good to look out for events that might be held by the school you're attending. So for example, UNC has a program called Passport Go or Passport to Go. And this is something first year students and transfer students can apply to. And if they're accepted, they essentially get a free passport. And I think in the past, Liz can correct me if I'm wrong, this has also gone with a study abroad trip, I think.
Yeah, so the program, the Center for Global Initiatives where I work, has this Passport to Go program. I feel like they give out maybe around 150 free passports to students that apply, and then they kind of track you throughout school. And I think one of the conditions for getting the passport is that you agree that you're going to go abroad sometime during your 4 years. Sometimes there's another program called it's a Puerto Rico program, so it's a short-term study abroad. So if you want to get like a little taste before you would go and do something for a longer term abroad, you just go to Puerto Rico for like 5 days. And then after that, you can see if you want to go do more. But a lot of students that do the Passport to Go also do the Puerto Rico program, and there's also a short-term program to Trinidad and Tobago as well.
Yeah, so that's just one example of an event we have at UNC. Just another example, Wake Forest in the past has also had an event called Passport Caravan. And at that event, they gave out 100 free passports, essentially. They didn't give them out, obviously, because it takes time to get it back. But 100 students essentially got their passports for free. So number 2 in your steps to getting abroad is choosing where you want to go. So some of you already talked about some barriers that might keep you from going. And we'll address some of those here. So first, like Sammie kind of touched on with her experience abroad, you're going to want to take into consideration the credits you need to graduate. You want to make the most of your time abroad. You don't want to just take classes that aren't going to end up counting toward your degree. So you can look at programs based on what courses they offer. As a journalism major, I would want to look for programs that might offer me a journalism class that I can count toward my degree. So that's just one thing to take into consideration. Another thing is your comfort level abroad. Some of you have taken Spanish or you've started to take Spanish. You might be more comfortable going to study in a place that speaks Spanish primarily than a place like Thailand or Russia, where they don't even have the same alphabet. If you don't know a foreign language or a second language, you can go somewhere that has a lot of English speakers or that speaks primarily English. So the UK, places like Amsterdam might have more people who speak English than Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, for example. So if you're not sure because of language, I definitely wouldn't say to let it stop you, but there are ways you can make yourself more comfortable with that. And some of you talked about not wanting to leave your families. You can take into consideration how long you want to be abroad. Are you going to be comfortable with 1 month away from your family or 4 months? I actually didn't think about this until Sammie was talking about the food she ate, but maybe you want to also consider your diet. If you're vegetarian or vegan, you might have easier times finding food in one country than another. Another thing is budget. I think this is the biggest barrier that students have with going abroad. There are 2 ways that you can kind of address this barrier before you even apply for financial aid or scholarships. You can kind of narrow down your program options to see what the best budget you can get is. So number 1 is how long you're going to want to be abroad. We already talked about how you might not be comfortable with being abroad for very long, but how long you decide to be abroad is going to impact the cost of the program. So even if each semester is $15,000 and the whole year is $30,000, even though it's equal in terms of semester, if per semester it's more than you would be paying for tuition at home, then maybe you only want to do one semester. And obviously summer programs are going to be cheaper. So that's something you can think about. And another thing is the location of your program might impact the cost. Some places have a higher cost of living than others. So Paris in general has pretty expensive housing, transportation, and food. But New Delhi, compared to the exchange rate with France, is going to be a lot cheaper. So a UNC Summer in Paris program, I think, is around $10,000. The same UNC Summer in India program is about $6,500. So you can see there it's about the same amount of time for each program, but they're in different places. So that does impact the cost a little bit. And then you can just explore program options and see what's best for you. Look at the varieties of budgets that come with the program and just take into account how that can fit in your budget.
Yep, and Sammy was just mentioning in the chat that there are some programs that you don't need any foreign language experience, and then there's some that do. So also, like I studied abroad in France, and for my program there was no French experience required. Some students, you could take all your classes in English because it was at an international university, and so the French students were actually in those English classes. They were taking business classes in English along with American students. I took all my classes in French and Spanish because I wanted to, but you didn't have to know any French to go, and you could just learn some basics while you were there. And so yeah, Sammy said actually nearly half the students did not study Arabic before, and they still really enjoyed the experience. I feel like there was one other thing I was going to tell you, but if I remember, I'll come back to it.
So a lot of that comes with universities. The amount of opportunities that your school offers is going to be different depending on where you go, but we also did want to highlight some community college options if they don't offer quite as many programs. Community colleges often also offer trips abroad. For example, College of the Albemarle, which I think is one of the closest community colleges to you guys. Yeah, they generally offer about 2 trips per year. I'm sure it's different this year just because of COVID, but I know they're offering a trip to Thailand in the spring. So that's one thing to think about. I think some other schools further away that definitely offer trips are Pitt Community, Nash, Davidson County. I think Samantha, you went to Davidson. So a lot of community colleges also offer trips abroad. Even if you don't get credit for them, they're good experiences. And then another thing is a lot of community colleges in North Carolina participate in the NC Global Scholars of Distinction program. So basically, you can take a certain number of global courses and go to global events. And once you are done with all these requirements, you'll get a distinction on your transcript. You'll get a certificate from UNC because it's a partnership with UNC. And this is something you can list on resumes, applications to jobs, to other schools. And a lot of colleges participate in this. So it's a way for you to kind of expand your global awareness without necessarily having to spend a semester or a year abroad. And so some colleges near you guys maybe are College of the Albemarle again, Roanoke, Chowan, Nash, and there's a whole huge list on the website for UNC's Global Scholars.
Yeah, there's a ton of community college options as well. And the other thing I was going to say is I know UNC has a program to Mexico where they've created the program where it's the exact same cost to go and study abroad in Mexico as it would be if you stayed on UNC campus for the semester. I think that it might be even slightly less. So sometimes going abroad, you actually especially if you get a scholarship, you might end up paying less money to go abroad than to stay on campus at UNC, especially if you study somewhere where, like Sarah was saying, the housing might be less expensive. When I studied in France, it was a long time ago, but it was when the euro was worth less money than the dollar. And so for my housing, for my apartment, well, I was in the dorms actually, I think it was like less than $200 with the conversion per month. Whereas when I was in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan, rent was usually $450 or $500 a month. So my housing was actually cheaper abroad. So sometimes it can be less money. We always think, oh, it's going to be more money, but it depends where you go and what program you do.
I think that was another thing I thought about mentioning earlier and forgot, is that if you're not sure about committing a whole semester or year of tuition abroad, there is also the summer options that are really affordable. You don't have to worry quite as much about the credits because it's kind of pulling away from your extra time, but that's also a good option if you're worried about funds. So finding ways to pay for study abroad, number one is going to be financial aid. This is something that almost everybody is going to be applying to anyways with FAFSA. Two things to consider when it comes to financial aid and study abroad. Number one is that a lot of times financial aid can only apply to spring and fall semesters. So if you're planning on doing a program in the summer, your financial aid might not be able to apply to that. The second thing is if work study is part of your financial aid. So a lot of us interns with Carolina Navigators are work study students. That can't really be applied to study abroad because you can't work on campus or work for the university while you're abroad. Another part that probably a lot of you are thinking about are scholarships. This is just like applying for scholarships for the regular school year. Just do your research. Honestly, there are so many scholarships for studying abroad. Some of them are going to be offered by your school. Some of them are going to come from third parties. Honestly, you can just Google study abroad scholarships or look at the same websites that you would find normal college scholarships for. So Unigo, Scholarship Owl, those should all offer study abroad scholarships. There's some that only do study abroad scholarships. I think CIEE is one, and that should be listed at the end with links. But some scholarships are specific to the place you're studying in. So my scholarship was specifically for Asia. Sammie, I don't know if yours was specific to your region.
Not exactly, but I will say, like, especially in our age, use social media because I did find a couple of scholarships through there and they were very random. There were like one called Tortuga Scholarship, but the one with diversity abroad was actually something I found on Instagram. And I just had to take different pictures of myself while I was abroad. And I mean, I got $500 from that. So there's different ways, you can fund your study abroad experience.
Yeah, and they also have some, there are some scholarships specific to your program. So some programs might be easier to find scholarships than others. So global studies majors might find more than a statistics major would, but there are definitely scholarships out there specific to your program. Some are going to be merit-based, so mostly about your GPA, your writing abilities, but then a lot are based on financial needs. So trying to get resources to those who usually don't have the resources to go abroad. And then last is personal financial decisions. Saving up is definitely a privilege. Not everyone can save up money because we're spending it as soon as we get it for the things that we need. But if you do have that privilege to save money, it's definitely a big part of getting yourself abroad. If you're not doing anything one summer, think about getting a summer job to save up. Or if you go to Starbucks every single day of the week, maybe only go once a week. There are little things that you can do that really add up and help you get abroad.
And I put in the chat, there's a website called embark.unc.edu, and they've created this funding finder where you can type in certain information about what you're looking for and narrow it down for different funding options to go abroad. So I would definitely recommend checking out that funding finder. And yeah, I was just going to say for when I studied abroad, I used financial aid. So like Sarah said, I applied with the FAFSA, I used my financial aid, and then I also worked full-time every summer since I was, I think, 16 during the summers, and then I worked part-time while I was at school at UNC. So I used some of my savings and I used my financial aid package to get me abroad.
Yeah, so for you guys, it may seem like college is a long ways away. I promise it's not. It's going to be with you as soon as you know it, or employment if that's what you're looking toward. But there are things you can do in high school to get abroad. There might be programs offered by your school. Miss Blystone, I don't know if your school has offered any travel programs.
They put together like one of those kind of study abroad things, like what is it, like 1 or 2 weeks every now and then, but it's not a very regular thing.
Right. So if those come up again with your school, those are opportunities for you to get abroad, and with people that you know, which might make you more comfortable if you're going abroad for the first time. If you don't want to, there are ways to study abroad during high school, which is actual studying if you want to do a semester or a year. If that's not something you really want to do, if you don't want to be quite an exchange student, there are a lot of programs that offer studies in the summer. So they're just temporary. You don't have to worry about missing out on high school with those. One thing is NSLIY. I don't remember what it stands for. Basically, it's a high school language program under the US Department of State, and they offer summer programs, I think also semester and year-long programs for students to study a specific language. So they don't offer programs in every language, but just a few include Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, and if you're accepted to this, they also provide the funds for you to do this study. So they pay for the cost of housing, for the travel itself, any of those costs other than, you know, buying souvenirs or something. They cover all the necessary things. There are opportunities to volunteer abroad when you're in high school. There's a global leadership opportunity. I think it's called Leadership Adventures or Global Leadership Adventures. If you know what the Peace Corps is, this is basically a Peace Corps for high school students. You can't join the Peace Corps when you're in high school, but this is the equivalent. You basically volunteer your time abroad, and it's only for 2 or 3 weeks, I think, so it's not too big of a time commitment. And then the last thing we have up here is taking a global gap year. This is a year when students usually, they defer essentially a semester or a year of entering into college, and they use this year to do service abroad. UNC has a program called Global Gap Year Fellowship, I think, and it's hosted by Campus Y, and it's supported by UNC admissions. They basically, I think it's $8,000. Sorry, looking at the chat. They pay you about $8,000 if you're accepted to have this global gap year, and so you get to go abroad and do service before your first year of college. And I think UNC might be the only college in North Carolina that has like a school supported program for that.
And I just put in the chat, when I used to teach French and Spanish at the high school level, I had a student then, and he went abroad in one summer of high school through a program called the Experiment in International Living. If you just Google that, I'm not sure which different programs they offer now, but he applied for a scholarship to go, and almost all of his trip was paid for by the Experiment in International Living. He needed a little bit of extra funding to go, and so we found this scholarship through the school district that helped to pay the little bit that the scholarship didn't cover. And he had never left North Carolina before. It was his first trip leaving the state, and he went big, and he went to France. And he had only taken, let's see, he was in my French 2 class, I think. So he had taken French 1 and 2, and his French was awesome when he got back. And he loved theater, so he got to do a theater program there. So that's another one you can check out for high school.
And so lastly, we realized that college isn't going to be where everyone's going after high school, and that's totally fine. If you're thinking about the military, you join the military, you probably are going to travel. So that is something to think about if that's the path you're choosing. If you're looking to find employment immediately after high school, there are some global jobs that don't necessarily require college education to enter into them. One is being an au pair. As an au pair, you're essentially a nanny to a family in a foreign country. You don't usually have to have a college degree or anything. They cover things like housing. You live with the family, so that's covered. They usually pay for travel if you need to, go somewhere with kids or anything as an au pair. And sometimes they even give you time and money to take extra language classes while you're an au pair. You are expected to have some fluency in the language of the country you're going to. So if you want to be an au pair in Germany, you are kind of expected to know a little bit of German, but there are also opportunities to expand your language skills as an au pair. Another is a flight attendant, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to be flying somewhere anyways, so it's going to take you abroad. You don't usually have to have a college degree or anything to be a flight attendant. You do usually have flight attendant school, but that's also another employment option that could take you abroad. Volunteering is another option. I mentioned the Peace Corps a little bit earlier, but basically the Peace Corps is an organization that sends volunteers from the United States abroad. They work in things like farming, public health, conservation, tons and tons of volunteering areas, but they essentially pay for your necessities. It's not a job or anything because you don't get a wage or a salary. They do give you education awards, or they give you student loan deferment, so you don't have to pay off your student loans quite as quickly, or sometimes even student loan forgiveness, so that you don't have to pay your debt at all anymore. And so that is something that I think draws a lot of people to the Peace Corps. And then there are also opportunities you have to expand your global awareness without even leaving the country. AmeriCorps is essentially the same as Peace Corps, but volunteers work inside the United States. They again cover all of the necessities like housing, transportation. They give you a living stipend, and they also give you education awards. So if you're saving up for college or you're trying to pay it off, that helps. You can move to a new city or state. The culture in North Carolina is different from the culture in Texas or from the culture in Oregon or New Hampshire. So even moving within the country is going to expose you to a lot more diversity, especially in cities where they have a lot more people from different countries. And then you can just incorporate more diversity into your daily life. So listening to Caribbean music, maybe try buying your groceries at an Asian grocery store, watching a film from Nigeria. There are tons of things you can do in your daily life that expose you to more diversity and really improve your global awareness. You don't even have to leave anywhere for that. So we're just kind of